those economic hitmen called the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and the World Bank are back at their dirty business. What they're doing is, after the New World Order, de facto New World Order occupation governments enforced all these emergency lockdowns and utterly destroyed their economies based on a lie, a deception, a hoax, based on pure propaganda, the COVID cult, the COVID conspiracy. The World Bank and IMF have stepped in as usual after the crisis has been artificially induced, choreographed, programmed, constructed, created. The IMF and World Bank have stepped in and said, yeah, sure, we will offer all your corrupt politicians and corporations billions of financial aid, just as long as you swear an oath to the COVID cult. Just as long as you repeat the COVID catechism. Just as long as you comply completely and fully, unreflectingly, obediently, and without any reflection to the WHO's recommendations. So basically the IMF and World Bank are back at their dirty business of destroying economies. Now what they do is they tell government leaders who want to get re-elected, we will finance your economy to the tune of billions of dollars as long as you go along with the COVID conspiracy. As long as you basically lock down your countries and destroy your economies. How ironic. We'll give you billions if you will destroy your economy. Because that's what the World Bank and IMF are all about. Economic instability, destroying national sovereignty. There's at least two ways to make someone your slave. You can legally have slavery and use physical compulsion and force, violence, to force people to be your slaves. Or you can tell them, hey, you guys, you're free. You're free men and women. Yay, liberty. You're free. And then what you do is get them in debt to you. You lend them money. And once they're in debt to you, they become de facto slaves. Because in order to repay the debt they owe you, they have to do what you tell them to. One, they have to work. They have to put up with their bosses. Can't possibly become a whistleblower and expose corruption because you'll lose your job and then you won't be able to pay back your debts. So basically, the New World Order is so keen on democracy, what they call democracy, because it's much easier to manipulate the masses than it is to control an aristocracy. The aristocracy understand where their interests lie, and they're usually well educated and informed, whereas the masses are really easy to manipulate. You can manufacture consent very easily, and most elections are won by a very tiny number of what we call swinging voters. So all you need to do to win an election is to influence a very, very small number of people in a targeted number of seats to win an election. So often the fate of a federal election has been determined by a few hundred voters, literally. So anyway, back to the IMF and World Bank. What they're doing now, what the World Bank and IMF do, is they find corrupt politicians who are willing to do deals with them and to basically sign their national economic sovereignty over to the World Bank. Because what the World Bank and IMF do is say, they cripple a country's economy in various different ways. They bankrupt economies. And then once they've bankrupted the economy, the nation, they go in and say, hey, we're your savior. Yeah, savior, messiah. We're your financial messiahs. We're going to lend you billions and billions of dollars in bailouts, just as long as you give us control over your, not just your economic policy, but your social policy. So that the World Bank and IMF become the de facto one world government. They get to dictate to supposedly sovereign nations their education policies, their healthcare policies, how much money they get to spend on social security and social welfare. And in this case, their response to the COVID conspiracy. Basically, they get to tell sovereign nations what their policy should be. That these sovereign nations must impose emergency lockdowns as a condition of getting the bailouts, the billions of dollars. And usually these billions of dollars don't go to benefit the country at all. The corrupt politicians funnel the money through their own corporations, through their cronies, through their sponsors, corporations, and through the 160 or so huge corporations in the world, which control the world basically, through their subsidiaries. In the same way, the cult of Judah has many subsidiaries, different brands, if you like. Brands such as Islam, Christianity, Marxism, global warming, COVID cult. These are all new brands of the cult of Judah. In the same way that about 160 corporations in the world really own all the other companies. Their directors sit on the boards of all the smaller companies. Yeah, so basically, when the IMF and the World Bank lend a nation lots of money, that money ends up in the hands of a very few people. And it ends up back in the hands of the same people who lent the money, only they got it back with interest. Yeah, so basically remember that debt is slavery. And consider this, every time you hear on the news about your government bailing out companies, bailing out individuals, all the sorts of cheap loans or free loans, and in Australia allowing people to spend their own superannuation fund before they retire, so they'll never get to retire. Anytime you hear about supposed government welfare and spending and the money that's being supposedly handed out to help you, remember it's your money. Every time they spend billions of dollars on something, that's billions of dollars you're going to have to pay in tax with compounding interest. So basically this COVID cult has totally bankrupted the world economy, totally bankrupted every sovereign nation. There's not a sovereign nation out there that's not bankrupt, and basically now being controlled by the IMF and World Bank, yeah, which have no mandate, no democratic mandate. They're not for the people, by the people. They're private corporations with their own vested interests. Yeah, so yeah, even though I'm not feeling very well, I thought I should mention that because recently some people in their own videos have been referring to the World Bank and IMF, which are going around the world forcing supposedly sovereign nations as a condition of loans, huge billions and billions, multi-billion bailouts, as a condition of these bailouts, they have to conform to the COVID cult. They have to recite the COVID catechism. They have to impose all the lockdowns and measures. And all these measures are designed to destroy the economy. So the people who are claiming to be the Messiah and the Savior are really the people doing the damage. As is often the case, usually the case. Impression management, perception engineering, construction of social reality, propaganda, full spectrum propaganda. Yes, and so basically this whole COVID, wars are designed to bankrupt countries. And I just want to mention, again, something that people keep talking about. People are, you read in the media that trillions of dollars are being wiped out from the world economy. The trillions of dollars are being wiped out from the stock market. And I'm a bit groggy, so I can't remember the exact terminology I want to use. But basically, anytime you hear about trillions of dollars being wiped out, being wiped off, being lost, remember that those trillions of dollars aren't being destroyed. They're going to a certain group of people. Trillions of dollars haven't been wiped off the world economy. They've been transferred from one group of people to a very, very, very small group of people called the cult of Judah. The stock market doesn't destroy value when value is wiped out. It's transferred from one pocket to another, because the people who sell low lose the money. The people who buy low then hold the assets until they recover in value. So anytime you hear of trillions of dollars being wiped off the world economy, or trillions of dollars being wiped off the stock market value, remember that those trillions of dollars haven't been destroyed. They've been transferred from your pocket, from your superannuation fund, from your share portfolio, from your government superannuation fund, from your government treasury, and they've been transferred to the pockets of a very few cult of Judah, New World Order elites, the banksters. Yeah, so it's a bit early for me, and getting migrainy. But anyway, I'm very conscientious, and I feel obliged when I have insights to share them. So, ciao for now. Oh yeah, and I just want to make a call out to Brendan O'Connell. I got the impression that Brendan O'Connell actually does read some of my things and does watch some of my videos, and he finally responded to something I said directly. He used to say narrative about the narrative, and now for once I heard him say the narrative. So well done, Brendan O'Connell. Old dogs, new tricks, hey? Yeah, so I hope one day maybe Brendan O'Connell will even respond to my attempts to contact him. So all the best. Ciao for now.